Like most days I would go 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. because I would use the extra time before and after the school day to work on my skills to make sure I was not getting left behind, because you're given a set, like an assignment every single day, and you must finish it before you go, or you're just going to back yourself up. You're going to get left behind. You can't take the exam, et cetera, et cetera. So that was 3.5 months. Once I passed that, I then went on to work as a teaching assistant at another coding bootcamp, very separate from my own. And this was just another chance for me to just get a different perspective.
Welcome to the Tech Unlock podcast, where we demystify emerging technologies and give you the keys to unlock your successful tech career. I'm your host, Grace McJones. Let's unlock the future together. Friends, welcome to a brand new episode of the Tech Unlock podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome. Thank you for listening. And if you've been an OG, thanks for riding with me. I'm so excited for today's episode. We've been trying to record this for a while. What do I mean a while? A long time. So I'm finally glad that this is happening. And I have a friend, a coworker, a sweet turned PM with me on the show today. And we're going to talk about what is needed to become a successful PM. And if you're a sweet trying to transition into a PM, the tools that you need. And so I'm excited for my guest today, Cherita Ousley. Welcome to the Tech Unlock podcast.
Woo, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I know it's been a while, but before we jump right in, we talked before recording about what's going on within tech and AI and all that fun stuff, because we live through it every day, whether that's through work or, friends, colleagues. So recently there was a AI that was announced by Cognitive Lab, Devin, and apparently this dude brought a lot of stress because he's the first AI software engineer. And a lot of folks are like, oh my gosh, like software engineering is dead, And I've talked about it before. I feel like tech careers in its golden era is kind of dead or dying. But this kind of put the nail in the coffin at first. And then now there's so many YouTube videos showing that the folks who did the demo kind of lied about the abilities of Devin. Devin, you was a liar.
So
your creators were lying.
Work, okay?
So it doesn't actually work. I think they used that demo in order to get more investors. But regardless, there was just a wave of fear from a lot of people who worked in tech as software engineers or people who are studying computer science. So for folks who are, kind of scared about like, oh my gosh, is, AI going to take my job as a software engineer because all these AIs are coming from my throat. They're coming from my job. What do you think? Is it still worth studying computer science in the day of AI?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. There's one thing to know computer science and be well versed in that. There's another thing to know how to use AI specifically. Like that's just the domain of computer science. So just saying, oh no, I don't need to go get a computer science degree now because there's AI. AI is going to take over my job. No. We still need you. Now you're missing out. Now you are forfeiting the opportunity for you to come into this space. Those are fundamentals, that's kind of like a timeless skill, timeless knowledge to have. This AI stuff, yes, it is very exciting. And yes, it is changing the world, but this is just a piece. This is just one part of the bigger picture. So for sure, I still think it's worth people going to school, getting computer science degrees. If anything, we need people behind the scenes here running AI. You need to learn AI then. Like, take that up then as your, I keep saying domain, but I'm trying to say another word, specialty. Okay.
Specialty,
take that, take that up. So you it's not only like these things don't build themselves, as we're seeing, right? With this becoming fraudulent, we need scholars, we need people who are able to write this code to make it what it is, to make it perform. It's just not going to perform on its own. There's a dev who's probably got a computer science degree behind it. So
yeah. I love that perspective. And also remembering, someone said it's AI won't replace you, but someone using AI will replace you.
Correct. So
definitely making sure that you're upskilling where needed, but not getting too overwhelmed by all the news, because it's overwhelming to just get, reading the headlines and everything. I know recently, OpenAI came out with GPT 4.0, where there's this demo where it's literally, it can't see you. And, someone was like, hey, like, help my child do their homework. And she was like a tutor, like literally. And it's just like, you can see all this and you're like, oh yeah, this is great. But also like, oh my gosh, like everyone just imagining the worst. But I think definitely having a, progressive mindset here at Microsoft is a growth mindset of like, okay, this is cool. If I don't need to do maybe tasks that can be automated, I can focus on creating more impact in a different way as a software engineer, or SWE as we say in tech.
Yeah.
So we mentioned computer science degrees, but let's be for real, you don't have a computer science degree.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. And you were here. You've been within tech for about 5 years now. Congrats, which is amazing.
Woo!
And you've had a non-traditional path into this, industry that we have a love-hate relationship with. So can you tell us how you went from getting a bachelor's degree and master's in kinesiology, and now you are at Microsoft as a, product manager?
Yeah. Wow. That's a long story right there.
We have time.
Okay.
That's why we're here.
Let's break this down. Okay. So I earned my bachelor's and master's in kinesiology, right? As you just said. And for the longest time, I had my mind set on going to physical therapy school. Like, you couldn't tell me I was not going to be a PT until I finished the master's program, and I did love research. Okay. So if I hadn't gone this route, maybe I would have considered that again. I loved research, and that's why I continued through the master's program. After that, I decided to go and work under a physical therapist. Like, hey, okay, let's see what's up here. Let's see if this is actually it. So you may be thinking, why didn't I just figure that out prior to getting out of school? Like, why wait until after school to say, hey, let me go sit with a physical therapist? And the answer is simple. They require the volunteer hours in undergrad, for you to get these hours built up so that you can then apply to a physical therapy program. But it's only when you go and work under a physical therapist every single day of the week, 8 hours a day, you see their job in and out. It's nothing to go in there and give, 2 hours here, 2 hours a week, maybe 4 hours a week. That's not enough to draw the clear picture about what a physical therapist does. And so once I got that picture drawn out for me very clearly, I realized that was not what I wanted to do. And so at this point, I had friends in my network who were already in tech. I had a friend who was already going to a coding boot camp, but it was on the West Coast, And so I started to explore that idea, and I looked into this coding boot camp, and the only requirement that they had was, here are the algorithms. Here are 10 algorithms. How do you feel doing this? I feel great. It's fine. I can do it. That was my response. I'm like, oh, okay, this is it. I was really good at math and science in high school. So I figured, hey, if I set my mind to it, I can do it. You know what I mean? I'm doing this. So I did the 10 algorithms, and I was like, this is it. Okay, cool. So I enrolled into a 3.5-month coding boot camp. And during this time, we learned 3 full stack languages. So there was one new language, one new stack each month. And at the end of the month, we would have to test to pass this stack by building out an application using the stack. Okay. So you can only imagine how intense this was. As we were talking about, people go get computer science degrees. That's a 4-year program. I am now doing this in 3.5 months. So imagine all the things that we do not get to as far as theories, fundamentals. We're just here. This is the action base. This is literally, you give me the code, teach me how to do it, and I'm going to go build something. So I was there. It was a full-time program. I understand this is not for everyone. I was still living at home with parents, and I was able to go to this program 9 to 5 or 7 to 7. Most days I would go 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. because I would use the extra time before and after the school day to work on my skills to make sure I was not getting left behind, because you're given a set, an assignment every single day, and you must finish it before you go, or you're just going to back yourself up. You're going to get left behind. You can't take the exam, et cetera, et cetera. So that was 3.5 months. Once I passed that, I then went on to work as a teaching assistant at another coding bootcamp, very separate from my own. And this was just another chance for me to just get a different perspective. I'm on the other end of things. I'm now helping students. And so after this experience, I landed my role as a junior developer. At that point, I realized, hey, okay, I need more than this. I was like always seeking more. And so I was a junior developer at this company, but I didn't feel that I was getting the experiences that I needed to grow see, there's a pattern that's going to show as we talk. I didn't feel like I was getting the experience needed to grow as a developer. And so I started networking. I'm just like, okay, hey, I'm here. This is the field. This is where I'm really putting all of my effort and energy. And so I started volunteering with Black Girls Code. And then with Black Girls Code, we had an event at Microsoft in Chicago. There's a Microsoft campus in Chicago, or a Microsoft space, I should say, in Chicago. We went there. This day, there was a panel of Black women within Microsoft who were speaking on their experiences, on their skills, their roles, what it's like to work at Microsoft. And I'm sitting in the audience, not as an attendee, I'm here for the kids. And I'm like, wow, I would love to work for Microsoft. Something that hadn't crossed my mind before. When I'm like, oh, this is nice. So after the panel was over, I grabbed, I spoke to the woman on the panel, and with one of them, she was just like, actually, there is this program that Microsoft offers for people who have a non-traditional CS background, who are now looking to work in tech, whether it's a software engineer or a PM at the time. And I was like, do tell. Please tell me more. Okay. And so she gave me more information, told me where to find the application. That night, I went home and completed the application. Like, the applications were closing like the very next week or something. It was very tight because with this program, it's very popular. It was very competitive. Yes. And so there's a very small window for when you can apply. So this program, this Black Girls Code event was probably, let's say, the 3rd week of September, and then the applications were due the 4th week. I got mine in that same day that she told me. And this program is called Microsoft Leap. It is still called Microsoft Leap, which is foreshadowing where Grace and I did connect. Yeah. So once we get to that point, I submitted the application, got into the Leap program, which was super competitive. My cohort was really competitive. I think there were over like 700 applicants. Only 129 made the interview round. Only 29 of us made it there that year in November. And so with the Leap program, it's a 16-week program. And like the first 5 or 6 weeks, you're just doing classroom work where you're learning the stack that you're probably going to be working on inside your team. Then you get placed on a team for 10 weeks as an apprentice. And this is your time to not only learn as much, but also showcase your ability to come and work on this team full time. And the goal here is to land a full-time job. That's the goal. Okay. Learning as well. But you're like, hey, I'm here. I literally took a leap of faith. You move across the country and you join this program. Nothing is guaranteed. This is contract work. And then, you work to get a full-time position. So at the end of the program, you do well. So at the end of the program, it's like, if you did well, okay, we can consider you for an interview if we find you a good fit for Microsoft. If not, they won't even consider interviewing you, which sounds harsh, but that was competitive. It's the truth. It's competitive. Yeah. It's just so competitive. So needless to say, I landed a full-time role with the team that I was working on as an apprentice. And I landed it as a software engineer. That's the work that I started doing. That's the work that I became a full-time employee at Microsoft doing. So that's how the software engineering career started.
That's amazing. I love how detailed you were in your story, and there's so many points that I kind of want to pick through. But just summarizing, I think it's amazing how you were able to take that self assessment of like what you were doing and being honest with yourself. I'm like, this is not it. Even though I studied, a undergrad and master's, I don't think this is it for me. And taking that leap, honestly, of faith to join a coding boot
Yes.
camp, which is very challenging, like you mentioned, in terms of, I have a computer science degree, but I have a different story of, going to school like 3 different times, changing my majors until like I figured out what I wanted to do. But that's a lot, like 4 years condensing into 3 months. That is super intense. But something also like I wanted to like share or bring out in your story was that you decided to give back, volunteer, teach other people, give of your knowledge. And that's what enabled you to be in the right room at the right time.
That's good.
And I think I want people to know that as like, okay, and sometimes people may minimize what they do know, what they're able to do. And they're like, oh, no, I don't know a lot. Or maybe, oh, I'm not suitable for this. Or I need to be a senior. I need to have this title. It's like, no, like your experience is valid wherever you're at in life. Like there's someone else wishing like, oh my gosh, I want to go to a boot camp. And you're like, oh, I went through that. I couldn't really. It's like, no, like that experience alone can provide so much value for someone else. And so even listening to you talk, I didn't realize that it was in, working a volunteer with Black Girls Code, that's how you got exposed to Microsoft, which is so interesting. So that's just kind of a side tangent of like, don't be afraid to share your, your gifts or talents or even your interests with other people. And I want to talk about coding boot camps because obviously a lot has changed over the past few years. And I know people who might be considering, a switch are probably thinking about it, and then the cost, right? Of, what it costs. So can you quickly give us some pros and cons of going to a coding boot camp? We know it's obviously not you laughing. But it's,
I'm being put on the spot.
No, because I do feel like there are people who are like, oh, is it worth it? Right. And people have different lifestyles, whether they're parents or maybe they're single or maybe they're in a different country. But I want us to be realistic of like, it costs a lot. This is a time commitment. This is different from the apprenticeship program that, you and I both went to where you actually got paid to be part of it. For the boot camps, you have to put that up front, So please talk about the pros and cons of attending coding boot camps.
Yeah. So pros would definitely be you're building a new skill, right? Anytime you're learning a new skill, you're more valuable to the workforce. You just expose yourself to more. You're now just increasing your opportunities here. So having that would be one. Another one, you're also increasing your network. So you're in this cohort with other people who come from different backgrounds and who have different connections, different insights, different experiences that you can then grow and connect with. I would also say it gets you ramped up pretty quickly, right? So like I said, you go from 4 years of a degree to 3.5 months, right? And when I say like you're hands on, you're actually doing the work, you're building apps. So it gets you ramped up really quickly, right? And it gets you in the room. You start to get this exposure, you're practicing, you're actually being a doer. So I think that is good. Another pro would be not all programs are full-time. Some of them are part-time, right? So if you are in a space where you are trying to transition slowly and you need to work full-time, you have a family to take care of, there are part-time options, which I think that's a pro. All right, so that's about 4 or 5. Now, the cons.
Let's get into it.
One, I would definitely, and this is actually a neutral. The more you put in, the more you get out. So I was there 9 to 5, 7 to 7, right? Because it worked for me. And because I was able to put that much time in so quickly, I was able to get done and get the value out of it quicker.
So 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day.
Yes. No, it's most days it was 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I would get in there early. and meet with maybe another friend from the cohort, like, hey, can we work on this? And then I would stay after to probably finish up whatever the work was of the day. So it's so commanding, but I mean, so demanding. And so for me, I didn't have that many responsibilities at the time. I wasn't tied to a mortgage. I wasn't tied to rent, I was just able to do it. That's not everyone's reality. So that is definitely a con. Like at this point right now, that's just not even realistic to like go and give 9 hours, 7, whatever, however many hours, 7 to 9 hours, or even 12 hours a day to this program. So that also, so I remember mentioning the fact that you hit the ground running and you get ramped up quickly as a pro. To a degree is also a con, right? Because you're not understanding how you're getting these things done, right? You just learn how to, solve the algorithms and the problems. But I think there is beauty and its value in getting the degree and understanding the theory, understanding how to approach all of these type of problems, understanding the different type of algorithms and knowing how to approach them versus like memorizing, oh, I remember having this type of problem and then approaching it that way versus understanding the fundamentals, because then this is going to help you later on when you start coding for larger companies. Also, the price. Okay. So that's a huge con. It's either you pay for it out of pocket, and I know there are way more. When I took it, I think it was like, I can't remember, maybe $10,000.
For the whole 3.5 months?
Yeah. So you can do out of pocket. You can take out a loan. Those are your options. And if you have it, amazing. If not, it may set you back. But then also like the return of the value, you get the money back tenfold, possibly, depending on how, you do once you complete the program. So that's a con, I would say, initially upfront, right? Like, think of someone right now. I'm just thinking, oh, I want to change my career, and where do I start? Okay, I want to go to a coding bootcamp. Oh, I need to commit X amount of hours. I need to put this money up. It's kind of overwhelming to take that all in.
So, knowing what you know now and knowing that this is 2024, for those who are literally debating about going this route, would you have gone the same route knowing what you know now in 2024?
That's good. The same route, like,
and I can see literally your face reminiscent of all the things that you went through. And I just want to be honest, because the reality right now, and I want this to be relatable for folks who are thinking about, going through this transition, because there's a lot to consider, right? Whether that's the state of the economy or the tech landscape with jobs. I do believe that, coding boot camps are very valuable, right? For those who might have the means or the time. But right now, though, like, what do you think? Like, do you think it's a liable way to transition into tech?
I do.
This economy. Okay.
I do. But I went really hard. That's the thing, I think, why I'm hesitant.
I see.
Like I went all in. I was not working at all. No income, just 3.5 months doing this until I landed a job. So I landed the first job that spring. So I completed this program in the fall of 2017, landed the TA job that winter, actually. It was like winter of 2018, landed the junior developer job, spring 2018, landed Microsoft October, November 2018. So it was back, it was going. There was movement. That's not realistic, I would say, for most people.
And so did you defer payment or did you pay up front?
No, I didn't. I took out a loan and I was paying monthly on it.
Okay. And I bring that up because I wanted to show that this is not really the easiest journey. Like, at all. Literally, I'm going into the details because it's like, people are like, oh, I went to boot camp and then I got a job and then leave. It's like, there are so much details that usually people leave out. I'm like, it's not easy. And also showcasing that everybody's journey is different, right? But there is some form of sacrifice needed.
Correct.
When you're going through this process.
Correct.
Whether that's monetary, whether that's, time commitment, but you made it on the other end, on the other side of this. So it's all to say that it is possible, but a level of self-reflection is needed. I'm like, wow, is this the right time for me? Is this the right time for me and my family and my, economic situation? And so there are things you have to evaluate. And so when they're trying to say, oh yeah, just go to coding boot camp, learn how to code and then get a job, it's like,
that's not actually. No.
It's not what it is right now. It's not what it is.
It was really like when you asked, it was actually really hard. I'm like thinking back to me at that point. And like, even the TA job that I took, it was like an hour away from where I live. And I had to take it because I needed income at this point. I needed experience on my resume, So it's like, it was so many sacrifices. And then the junior developer job, that was a 45-minute drive away from but I had I was not going to not take the first role that was offered to me. So, and I think that's another piece. And I tell people all the time when they come into my DMs on LinkedIn, like, how do I get to Microsoft? Are you taking those small jobs that you don't want to take? Like, are you considering those opportunities, or are you just blowing them over because they're not good enough? They don't fit, the status and the brand. No, you have to take those smaller opportunities that don't look as great.
Yes, 100%. And I love that you mentioned that because I feel like because of social media, everybody wants that high paying, high tech job right away, which is nothing wrong with that. But it's not reality, especially now. And this is not to discourage people. It's to be realistic and say, yes, it is possible, but don't neglect opportunities to learn at first because there's so much you don't know. Whenever it comes to working in tech and the language of the industry and how things work. And so by getting your first job, it doesn't have to be big tech. And some people have suffered because it was big tech and there was just such a hard time transitioning due to the language, the pace, and they're like, whoa, slow down. Like, this is a lot. So definitely consider, no one's saying don't apply to all the jobs, but even now there's so much, competition with all the layoffs happening and everyone literally has a computer science degree or they used to be, a software engineer and whatnot. So there's a high, there's less demand for engineers now because it's just like there's just so many people applying. But I think being realistic and saying like, hey, like if I get a job working as a software engineer at a medical company, that's not bad. That's amazing. That's great. I can start off there instead of trying to work for like the Big 10 or the Big 5 or whatever it is now. I don't think we even care about it anymore. But something I wanted to, find out from your perspective, what would you say was the hardest part about transitioning into tech? Because I feel like you've shared your story in terms of like, sacrifices and like studying and being fully committed. So what was one of the biggest, inconvenience, I would say maybe, when you decided to transition into the tech industry?
So I'm going to speak to the part of when I actually landed the full-time role at Microsoft. Because I feel like that's when it was the most challenging as far as when it comes to the industry itself. And I think that for people that come from non-CS backgrounds into this space, there's a lot going on, okay? You're competing with other people who have gotten the CS degrees, who have had the internships over the summers. These are your peers now. These are the people that you are being compared to when it comes time for performance reviews. So I think that was very challenging, right? In a sense of, how do I compete? Do I compete? All of these questions, the imposter syndrome. Do I belong here? What am I doing here? How can I get better? And so, like, yes, you've done these things and you're here, but I think there should be more conversation around how to maintain that talent there. Like, how can you grow them? They don't have the same background as the CS folks, right? They don't have the prior experience of the summer internships. So knowing that, how can we grow them in a way that's supportive for them, and then get them to the level where they're comfortable and competing, righteously with their peers? And I think that is, I'm going to say, has been and is still is like the hardest, the balance.
I love that you brought that up, because that's such a, not a touchy subject, but a sensitive one, which a lot of people don't talk about. It's like,
yeah,
it's great going through this apprenticeship programs and coming through a non-traditional route. But in terms of growth, once you get in the company, it's different, because there's just some things that you didn't have the privilege of learning through internships, or maybe even through college, and, other things that might, hold you back, literally. And sometimes it is mental, because imposter syndrome is real. And we talk about that, especially within the Black and Brown community, of like, wow, like, do I really belong here? And then sometimes industry reaffirming that by calling you a diversity hire, like, you're only here, and you're like, oh. I mean, after hearing the story you just shared, does it look like I'm at diversity? I have been through it, you put in the work. And so, if people are listening right now and they're maybe a manager or whatever within tech, how do you think is the best way to support folks who have non-traditional backgrounds to help them grow within their career?
Wow.
Let's get into it. Let's get into it, because we're here to learn and grow.
Wow, that is so good. I would say, really try your best not to disempower them. Like, find ways to empower them. Like, we're already, we're feeling outcast a little bit, right? Like, you're kind of like the different one. And like, some managers will want to say, oh, don't worry. You don't have to tell people you're a non-CS person. You don't have to tell people that you went through the elite program, right? But then, one, that's kind of part of your story.
It is not kind of. It is part of your story.
It's part of your story, right? Like, it's part of your. It's kind of part. It is part of your story. So, like, bringing that, it's not like you have to shout to the rooftops every time you're in a meeting. Like, hey, no, it's not like that. But you're talking to someone, you're networking with folks. This is your story. So, instead of like trying to erase this from them, or constantly reminding them that they're different by maybe not giving them the projects that are not as visible as the other ones, not giving them projects that are impactful like their peers, not giving them those opportunities to showcase their work, to showcase all of their skills, because they also bring skills from other industries, right? They have different skill sets. They're industry hires. So like, giving them these projects that really helps them thrive and puts them in front of leadership and saying, hey, this person has shown impact, here it is, here, versus disempowering them and maybe giving them something that isn't as impactful, isn't as visible. So now they're really struggling, trying to showcase this impact, and is drawing out their career progression. And, or if that is the case and you're doing that, also be very transparent. Like, say, this is the path. This is what I'm thinking. This is how I think we should do it, versus shying away from having those true, transparent career conversations. Because if you're doing this, like, in your mind, you're like, oh, it's fine, and this person does not know, they feel that you're working against them. Or if you're doing this and you have a strategy in your head, and they're asking you, you're not being transparent, now they can't trust you. Because what you're saying and what you're doing is just not aligning, And now when your report does not trust you, this creates just is kind of just destruction for the person's career. Because now you're not you're not being as probably transparent with your manager. So you're probably speaking with mentors who are then connecting you with other people. And now it's like this big web, like now you're looking to move things around and shuffle around, and it becomes a mess. So please empower your folks by giving them, one, transparency at the top about their careers, their performance, how they're doing. Also, with the work that you're giving them. We're all here to work. We're all here to shine. We're all here to grow. So if you're not giving this person this work because, I don't know, you have your own biases, your own thoughts or opinions on them, it's worthwhile to, one, check that, check yourself and your own biases, and also share that with them. And if you're like keeping them at this level, tell them why, and then help them get to the next level. Help them get there, So I think, in a nutshell, kind of like spill.
100% spot on. I agree with everything that you said, and I think it's needed to be said, and just to recap, number one, transparency, like 100% transparency. Number two, communicate. And number three, challenge. Like, we are not someone that's going to sit out of the challenge. Like, if you challenge us, we would step up to the challenge to make sure that we are doing the work needed to progress our team and organization and, have the impact that we know that we can have. And that leads me to kind of talking about transitions, right? We've talked about you already pivoting and, you coming into tech from a non-traditional background. But now this is another layer of transition, which is switching disciplines, right? As we call them in tech, going from a software engineer to a product manager, the PM, which stands for a lot of things in tech. Let's not get into it. But I'm curious, how did you know it was time to move from a software engineer suite to a product manager?
I knew at the moment where I felt isolated in the work that I was doing. So as a software engineer, you are just responsible for your feature, right? Like, you have to get this thing working. You're working with the PM who is giving you the requirements, but then it's your job to just go, you do your work. Maybe you'll also code with a coworker, but it's just you. And when I felt like I was just on my own island, especially when the pandemic hit, I figured, I was like, I think I need to be more higher level, and I want to connect with other people. And I just, I want to be able to explain this. I want to connect with the customer. I was missing the days from when I was a personal trainer or when I was in kinesiology. It was a lot of, like, during my research days, I was working with a lot of people. It was people, like, whether I'll get people to come in for a research study, or I'll be working with the patients in physical therapy, or I have my own clients as a personal trainer. That is what, like, drives me being like, okay, this is your problem. Let me help you with that. And so now being into tech and, having the experience as a software engineer, I felt it was the best time for me to start combining those skills that I had gained earlier with the skills now as a software engineer. And the product manager was the perfect mix of the two. And so that's when I started to pursue that. And I had, like, mentors who were product managers, and I was just say, hey, what is it like doing your job? And they would show me, they would tell me, they would give me interview questions, and I would sit with them like, wow, this is a different way of thinking, And so it was just at that moment, and it was right in the midst of the pandemic, actually.
Wow. That's a good segue to what I want to talk about next, tools and strategies to make that pivot. I know a lot of people are considering, just kind of like you, like, oh, wow, like, I came into this industry, or, I'm thinking about doing this role, but I don't know how to make that transition. So for you, what were some tools and strategies that helped you make that successful shift from a suite to a PM?
Yeah. So number one, definitely network. Because I had built a network when we were in person, or it's, you can do it while online as well, a lot of those folks were product managers already, successful ones, like really, really great at what they do every day. And so you really leaning on them and asking them questions. And so that, and then from them, they would give me resources like books to read. So I read books. They're like your basic Decode and Conquer or your Cracking the PM interview. So I started with those 2 books just to, again, get my feet wet and like see if this was something I really wanted to jump straight into. So I read those books. And then online on YouTube, there are a ton of videos of people doing mock PM interviews. And so I was just listening to them. I'm like, okay, this is what it's going to take for me to sit for a PM interview. And again, back to the point when I was telling you about the algorithms, when I first joined the coding bootcamp, like, is this something that I can do? Yeah, I can do it. And it was kind of the same thing. And so those were things that I started off with. And then once I got really serious and I started applying to different positions as a product manager, I scheduled mock interviews with other aspiring PMs. And you get those through the different networks and stuff, the YouTube videos that I mentioned. There's another one called Try Exponent that they're really great at just helping aspiring PMs prepare for the interviews. So I did that. The rest was history. Like once I, put myself out there, once I made the decision and said, hey, this is what I'm going to do, it just started to work. It, started to flow. And so I was just able to transfer internally to get my first PM role, which was really great too. Like the team supported me and switching from a software engineer to a PM, which is really common. It's not like it's, oh my gosh, it's foreign, but it's more common to go from suite to PM than it is to go from PM to suite. Or I guess challenging. I guess I can say it's less. It's less challenging.
Why do you think that is though? I love that you brought that up because I haven't seen a lot of people going from PM to suite. I definitely feel like the learning curve is much steeper, and the time investment is just a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for PM to suite. So you have to think about, like, as a PM, for the most part, you're probably not coding. Mm-hmm. You're not coding at all. So think about just how I had to put in the time to learn how a PM thinks. Mm-hmm. The PM will have to put in time to learn how to actually code. Like you have to learn how to
think like an
code,
engineer. Yeah.
And think like an engineer. I think the switch is less challenging for the suite to the PM is because of the deeply technical aspect of it.
Right.
You don't have to show your coding abilities. Should you know how to think like an engineer probably anyway? Sure. Like you mm-hmm. can. And I think high level, a PM can do that.
Right.
But when it's coming from a PM trying to go to a suite, it's one thing, like I said, to think like an engineer, but it's another to actually showcase that and show that you can own a feature, you can build it from the ground up. I just think it requires a little bit more effort and work than it would to say, hey, I'm going to not code anymore. I'm just going to be the thinker, the doer, the executor. I'm going to be the one telling people or setting the requirements or designing these things. I think it's just based on the actual work itself.
You answered my, next question about what's the difference between a suite and a PM. And so that was like a perfect answer for that, which is great. And for folks trying to think about what is a day-to-day like as a PM? Because obviously like we just mentioned, a huge difference. So for you, what does your day-to-day look like as a product manager?
It's different. And it depends on the product you're working on and the team you're working on. Because one team I worked on, I was in meetings all day long. Like all day, every day. It was just meetings. So you have no time to get your own work done. I'm like, when am I supposed to write this spec? When am I supposed to write this mock-up to send to the design team? Because I'm in meetings, And it could be good to an extent. Like if you love that thrill, that excitement, that go, and you're energetic and eager and all the things, it's perfect. But if that's not kind of what you want to do, then, if you find another team, on another team, we have no meetings. We have a meeting maybe once a week with each other, and in that extra time, you have to figure out how you can move your projects forward. So you are the owner of a product. This means you are making the decisions as far as what the requirements are, what are the priorities for this. If it's front end, you have to write the mock-up and meet with the design team to figure out what it's going to look like, how users are going to interact with it. So you have many stakeholders depending on your product. And so with this is going to determine how frequently you meet with people. You want to meet with your devs still. You want to make sure that you're checking in with them, making sure they're unblocked, making sure they are very clear on what they should be doing. Those different things like that. So you have many stakeholders depending on your product. So this can determine how often you're meeting with folks. You're setting the roadmaps for your product. So like, just think of yourself as a business owner, and what is it going to take every day for you to make sure that this business is running and it is running on time. And if it is not running on time, you have to be able to answer why it is not. And what are you going to do to get it back on track? So it differs, but for the most part, you're probably in meetings or you're working on a mock-up or you're meeting with design or you're meeting with the business or you're doing a privacy review. It just changes, and it changes by your product.
I love that. I love that answer. And I feel like something that you mentioned in terms of how like there's a mindset thing, right, of like taking ownership as a PM. Like that's, I think, a strong skill needed of where you're held accountable, where, as a suite, you're just kind of like, okay, I did my little thing and I'm done. Like you're not really overseeing the entire project or product or program. So there is a shift of like ownership of like, yes, you're not really, directing people per se, but there's a level of ownership and management that you have to sort of embody in this position. And while you were talking, I was just thinking through for people who are thinking about making a switch, internally, wherever they're at in their tech journey, what kind of support do you think they need to make this transition successful? Do you feel like for you, did you have the support needed to make this transition? Because it is a lot that goes into it. So how was your experience in terms of getting the support needed to make this transition successful?
My support was actually really great to switch from a suite to a PM. Because what happens is a lot of companies have like internal transfer programs where they favor the internal candidate for opening and would consider them before looking externally. And so if leadership knows you, it goes back to networking. People need to know who you are. People need to know who you are. I don't care how little your project is, how long you've been there. Get in front of people. And so once leadership knows who you are, they're going to they're going to go to bat for you if you built the genuine connection with them. And so once that happens, they can speak on your behalf and say, hey, there's actually an opening here. Here's the story. She's been working as a software engineer. She wants to be a PM now. Can we support her? Yes. That's, I guess it gets into sponsorship. That's probably what a sponsor would do for you. And so that's how this is how it worked for me. And so I was able to get in as a product manager. And then like this person knows that you were sweet. So they're just giving you certain projects. Maybe it could be technical. Maybe it's just like, oh, let's just see, and maybe that's how it starts off with smaller projects. And, be fine with that. Just, make sure you can showcase your skills as a product manager. And once you do that, they're going to just keep giving you more and more responsibilities. And so I think Microsoft does a really great job of internal transfers and supporting people when they want to make the discipline switches. So I was really supported. I think the number one thing though is you have to leverage your network.
And I want to just dive a bit deeper into leverage your network. What if you're someone who haven't built a network? Where do you start? Because that is the hardest part. Like, some people are like, oh, I'm an introvert, I get overwhelmed. And obviously, going from like the pandemic where folks were, well, before the pandemic where we're in person and it was much easier to folks being remote or hybrid, how does someone who doesn't really have a strong network in their career start to build one right now?
I would find okay, let me take a step back. I would definitely look into putting as many one-on-one meetings on my calendar as possible.
What
So
does
where
that
you
mean?
are, where you are right now. So, okay, I am a SWE and I want to become a product manager. Okay, great. Let me meet with the product managers within my group. You work with the product manager. That's one meeting right there. Your product manager has a peer. That's another meeting. They probably have another peer or a manager. Boom. Like you meet with people, like start putting one-on-ones, like one-on-one meetings, you and another person. Like you say, like, oh, I'm an introvert and I don't like meeting with one-on-one. It's just you and that person. This is your opportunity for you to speak to them, learn more about the work that they do, learn more about what it looks like if you wanted to transition into that role, ask them, what should you be doing? What resources should you look into? You want to ask these different people within your network. And then from there, they are going to connect you with someone else. Like, oh, this person transferred from a software engineer to a PM. That's how I've been connected with people because they're like, oh, she's a great person to talk to because she made the switch. And now I'm talking to someone having this conversation. You have to just start somewhere. You have to do it. You can browse online to see if this is internal, browse and see what PM roles are open. Get the hiring manager's email address, reach out. Could we have an informational? Could we have a one-on-one? I would like to talk to you more about this. They're going to ask you, why do you want to transition from a SWE to a PM?
Yeah.
Know your answer. Like this is how you do it. It's really, I think people try to overcomplicate it, right? And you can get so caught up in your head with putting yourself way further than where you are. Think about where you are right now. Who do you have access to right now? Start there. One-on-one. Hey, I'm just thinking about this. That's it. Thank you for taking time out to talk to me about this. Do you know anybody else who has done this transition? What was your experience like at the very beginning of being a product manager? Start the conversation. You have to just start the conversation. You have, and I tell people, even when they meet with me one-on-one, I'm like, you have to put yourself out there. If you do not put yourself out there, no one's going to know. You have to just do it. I mean, so if you could just, get out of your head, it's only overwhelming if you tell yourself that it's overwhelming. If I tell myself, oh, it's too much, it is too much. And I'm just probably not going to do it. But like, if you just take one step, just one step, that's all you're focusing on. One person. Okay, you remember one person for the month. Maybe you do one person a week. Whatever your goal, you have your goals for when you want to make the move. You have your goals for how quickly, how often. You get to set those things for yourself, but just get in the rhythm of putting yourselves out there. That's what I
Get in
say.
the rhythm of putting yourself out there. Okay, cool. All right, let's spit that out on X or whatever it's called now. But that is some solid advice, and thank you so much for sharing that, because I do believe even for folks who don't have a tech job or don't have a network, who do you have access to? That's something that you said. Like, everyone has access to someone, whether that's in person, online, if you have, a friend, a teacher, someone, but you have to get into that habit of putting yourself out there and not being afraid to ask questions. Like, no one's going to come to you
at all.
Like, no one's going to come and I think that's something that's similar with our stories. Like, Microsoft can come to us and say, hey, here's a job. Do you want to work? It's like, no, we have to seek out these opportunities for ourselves. And granted, you might not get a yes right away, right? You might not get a yes, applying for several jobs. But if you're persistent, obviously something is going to work out. And so I love that you're so transparent with your story and your journey. And I do hope that people leave this podcast feeling that it is possible to make career transitions and shifts and pivots. But knowing does require something, from them. And that even though the tech landscape is changing, there is still so many space an opportunity for folks to be working within tech. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and your story. And as we close out, we have a lightning round question, which is going to which you need to answer, taking 30 seconds or less.
Okay.
All right. So lightning round. If you're not in tech or kinesiology, what would you be doing right now?
Real estate.
Real estate. Ooh, okay. What's your favorite tech book or book you've read recently?
Ooh, I have a tech book. It's a career book. The First 90 Days.
The First 90 Days? Okay.
Yeah, The First 90 Days. That's a good one.
What's a piece of tech you wish you created if you had the ability to create?
A piece of tech that I wish I created that already exists?
Mm-hmm.
The iPhone.
She said, I'm Steve Jobs, y'all.
The iPhone. I mean,
yeah.
Runner up Instagram.
Instagram. Okay. What is one piece of technology that you feel is overrated?
Overrated. Oh, 30 seconds up. Oh, that's hard.
Really? You don't think a bunch? I feel like there's a list of things that could be overrated. It could be a tech product or a software.
I don't know.
Oh, you must really love tech. Okay.
I can't think of nothing. Nothing comes to mind that I'm just like, oh, I don't know.
Okay. Pass. What are some of the most used apps on your phone?
The mail accounts. So Gmail or the one that comes with Apple. Elevate is one of those apps that keeps you sharp. So like you go through readings, math, and speaking. It's just really great. Instagram, sadly.
It happens to all of us.
I know. And TikTok, which I had to recently just delete because wow. That's how I almost said that was I almost put that one as your last question, but
I saw you thinking through like, should I mention that?
I almost put that one.
Mine is Duolingo. I need to do better. What is the best thing about working in tech and the worst thing?
Best thing, flexibility. Flexibility in opportunities. You just can market yourself really well. And then the worst thing, it's so many options. It's so much to keep up with. You don't know which way to go. You don't know where you should put your time. You know, it's always something new, something exciting. You're like, oh, I want to do that. And now you're dropping everything that you're just working on because you're like, focus on this. Oh, I want to do that. And now you're pivoting, it's just too much. Too many choices.
It can be a lot. What's the best career advice you've ever received?
Receiving support from your team is the bare minimum. So that's not something that you should be begging them for. Like it's literally the bare minimum. And if you don't have that, you should probably reconsider. Yeah.
Lastly, if you could solve one problem using technology, what would it be?
Well, probably, I know it's so basic, but world hunger. For real. Like it could be done.
Yeah.
If someone's not already in the works, but getting food and health.
That's real. Yeah.
Food and health to everyone. Healthy food, not even just, we can get them McDonald's, which is fine. Not even to shade you McDonald's, but like we want to make sure people are healthy. So
yeah. I love that. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. This has been so enlightening. And just the transparency in your story, I feel like this is going to help a lot of people when it comes to making decisions, because I feel like it's hard. There's a lot to your point to consider, but oftentimes hearing someone's story can help us or guide us when it comes to making decisions, whether that's to grow in our career, make a change, pivot. So thank you so much for being on the show. If folks want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
LinkedIn, Cherita Ousley, or Instagram at Cherita Ousley.
Awesome. And I'll add the books and the tools that you mentioned to the show notes for becoming a great PM. So thank you so much, Cherita, for being on the show. I appreciate you. And thank you everyone for listening. Grace. And I'll catch you next week on the next episode.
Bye.